a lot of people really have wonderful ideas, know what they're talking about, but keep saying, well, I don't have this, or I don't have that certificate, and they keep going for more degrees in education. They're wonderful things to have, but there comes a point where you have to say, yeah, I do know enough. I am good at this, and just write it.
But that's self-confidence when they think they have to have more.
It is.
More education, more schooling.
Yeah.
Just, they don't believe in themselves.
Right. Right, and that's especially true.
problem.
Yeah, especially with a nonfiction book.
Oh,
You know,
yes,
fiction
I
will be a
agree.
little, maybe different, but with a nonfiction book, you're really wondering, well, why would anybody read mine, or why would anybody
gotta
want
have
that? Yeah,
authority.
exactly.
Okay.
Well, for me, it was the opposite because nonfiction writing is easy to me
Right.
because I've been doing it. But the fiction writing, I had to learn. I had to learn some things, and I'm still learning.
Yeah, you still learning that, right? Even the great writers, I was listening to Mary Monroe. She said, I still have to learn from other authors. I still have to learn how to perfect the craft. Even though she's won numerous literary awards, been a keynote speaker, she said, I still have to learn my craft.
Right.
So you never get done learning. That's a continuous thing as
Lifelong
well.
learning.
Right.
Right.
And I think what she means with nonfiction, like sometimes when I write spiritual, I was like, I had that fear, like, I have to have a master's in theology or a doctorate in this. And then I got to realize, no, if, the creator or God said that I could write this, my master's degree in library science should help me with the research part and the structure. That's all we did was write. So I got the courage. It wasn't so much the confidence, but I think you look at people's approval of what you write. Because if we look at grant writing, that's not so broad, but it's general to the point where does she really have the knowledge in that area? Is she a credible source? Does she have the authority to give me or the expertise in that area? So I think with my background, they teach us like with certain type of genres that you may work in, check this off, and I think that's what she was trying to do before she really engaged in the writing. But she has the experience because she's done numerous workshops, done a lot of speaking and things
And
of
that, some of that
sort.
has grown since I
Right.
actually wrote it. So it makes it kind of,
Exactly.
that's why we're in the second edition. Because as I continued to learn and understand, and take my own classes,
Exactly.
then I added
As you
more
continue, there's
pieces.
probably a third
Right,
edition.
added more
So
pieces.
the writer's
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's good. That's good.
Right.
So do you want to go a little bit in about the other book, Grants for Law Enforcement?
Oh, I think I spoke some about that
Yeah.
before,
Okay,
that
just in
technically
case
what
I
that
missed
was,
And
but I
think
appreciate
what I'd like to
that.
hear
Oh,
you
no problem.
do,
That's okay, but thank you.
what I'd like to hear you say more about is the grants for educators.
Oh, yeah.
That's the newest one that I'm working on. It'll be
Okay.
probably fairly similar in that it'll include the tips and it'll include some of the pieces on resources, but it'll be tweaked towards education. What happens, I've discovered, and is there are a lot of very small grants out there for education. Do you need do you want a class pet? There might be a small grant for that. Or, do you want to go on a field trip? There's a small grant for that.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the big, huge things, and it's something that a teacher could write if they have time, or they could ask a PTA member or a parent to help them write. They don't need a professional grant writer necessarily. Often the questions are things like, well, how are you going to use this? What are the children going to learn? Things that are
right,
easy to write. Very, very simple, very easy things. But they're not all being used, and people aren't aware of them. So I wanted to put together a package of all the ones that I could find. Some will be large grants, but majority of them will probably be those smaller grants. And a little bit of tweaking the tips and the pieces of navigating the grant writing maze so that it's a smaller book, but it would give that information. And then if they want to write larger grants, then this book would be the more appropriate one for the big money.
Okay.
So this book will take you to the government grants. So if you want to write to the Department of Education, one of their grants, and I've heard that they're really lengthy and
They are.
really detailed and
Right.
kind of hard.
Yeah. Well, if you follow these steps, you probably will have most of what you need when you go to actually write that particular grant. It's really is a very good structure, I think, for that. What happens is that the the grants on education, when you're looking at federal grants, and it sounds like you're talking about federal or
Right.
state grants, those are now mostly online, and for federal grants, you just need to go to grants.gov,
Yeah.
and you can search there. For state grants, you just want to go over to your state, whatever department it is, and start searching there for grants and get on their lists. They are large, and there's usually a short period of time in order to put it together. What I suggest, again, is if you're thinking about doing it, get started writing it early. Don't worry if you're missing a deadline, because often they'll come up again. You can call and double check. Often the next year, there'll be monies again. If not for that, something similar enough that your work won't go in vain.
Okay,
Okay.
good advice.
So now, how can we get a copy of these?
Well, the Navigating the Grant Writing Maze is currently online. It's both with Kindle and Lulu, and it's off of my website, which is fundingsuccess.com, and you will see under resources, and you'll see that pop right up.
Okay, and if people want to
And if
talk to
people,
you,
if
for
they want
social-
information, they can contact me at Keri Silk at fundingsuccess.com
Okay,
or 866-279-8666.
okay,
All
good.
right.
Well, thank you for coming,
Yes,
Terry.
thank
you. This has
Enjoyed
been
It's
wonderful. I've had
very
fun.
informative.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very.
Thank you both.
And that sums up our Meet the Author for this week.